Well, a recent opinion piece says the D.C. government may be held accountable for a, quote, Black Lives Matter double standard. This after an appeals court this week sided with pro-lifers who had written Black preborn lives matter in chalk on a D.C. sidewalk. Writing in the Daily Signal, Tyler O'Neill says in part, quote, the arrest of pro-lifers only underscores the message that if you don't agree with a government-enforced ideology on race and abortion, you don't have the same rights. O'Neill also says the pro-lifers from Students for Life of America and the Frederick Douglass Foundation were only guilty of, quote, heresy against the state religion. To discuss this recent decision and more, we go to Kristi Hamrick, Chief Media and Policy Strategist for Students for Life of America. Kristi, great to be with you today. Remind us what happened when the Students for Life of America and Frederick Douglass Foundation went to write Black preborn lives matter in chalk on a D.C. sidewalk back in 2020.
Sure. Well, it was a very volatile time, as many people remember. At that point, it was August 2020, and the city of Washington, D.C. had basically been burning for months through Black Lives Matter riots. And the government, the city government, allowed in permanent paint Black Lives Matter to be painted on the city streets, and then other people came along and painted equals to fund police. And so we had been involved in a Margaret Sanger project showing the racism of Planned Parenthood and their business model, where most of their facilities are located near minority neighborhoods where there's a disproportionate number of minority lives lost. So we have teams outside of a very sadly thriving abortion vendor in Washington, D.C., pretty much every Saturday. So we filed for a permit to paint Black preborn lives matter on the city street in front of that Planned Parenthood. We were told we could have the permit for an event and that we needed to use temporary paint, not the permanent paint of Black Lives Matter. We're like, fine, we'll do it. We also sent a letter to the mayor to make it clear that we really wanted to join in what was now clearly being allowed, which was expression in public spaces with paint. When we got there, it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. There were tons of police there ready to arrest people who had temporary paint, which we've been told was permitted. So we're like, fine, we won't paint. Instead, 2 of our students got chalk out, and people chalk all over the city, children chalk in Washington, D.C., even today. And they started to write Black preborn lives matter and were arrested, which was astounding. We were talking to our attorneys. The event continued. These 2 young people were just carted away like criminals for what? Chalk, which washes away. And they never even got to write the whole message on it. We came back later with poster board to hold up some signs, but it was viewpoint discrimination through and through. We had the whole thing on video. So we very quickly filed a complaint related to that, and it was thrown out. And this is what I think your listeners will find fascinating. When our case was first thrown out, the judge said it was okay to suppress the speech of peaceful pro-life protesters because we were peaceful. Clearly, they couldn't have a standard for free speech or any kind of behavior with violent protesters. So just being peaceful was the reason they were allowed to kick our case out. That's what we appealed. And we won the right to keep going.
Yeah, what was your reaction when you heard the news from the appeals court?
I was excited. I honestly thought we had a great case. What I was shocked by, everybody who's in and around Washington, D.C. knows it's pretty liberal. I didn't think we would get a unanimous decision where 3 judges voted for us for this case to be reinstated and to proceed. That was exciting. I wanted to believe that the Constitution still counted in our nation's capital, but I honestly wasn't sure.
Yeah. Kristi, we have about a minute left, but what comes next in this case? And what do you think this all says?
Well, Students for Life feels very strongly that free speech rights you're not permitted to use don't exist. We're going to keep fighting because these kinds of attacks, last year, the attacks on student free speech tripled. We've been in court all over the country. The DC government can appeal this case, or they could let it proceed, or frankly, they could settle. They could admit that they were wrong. They could allow peaceful pro-life speech in Washington, D.C., and that would be a win for everybody. So we don't yet know how the district is going to respond, but I can tell you that we are not going to drop this matter. Viewpoint discrimination is unconstitutional, and peaceful pro-life individuals have every right to say that Black preborn lives matter wherever they want.
Yeah, and Kristi, we are going to continue to follow this case. We thank you for coming on. God bless.
Thank you.